Yo, what's up folks? Welcome back to the channel, and in today's video we'll go over the Fire King deck, which has changed a lot, of course, throughout its inception, originally with the structure deck coming out, being played for example with Dogmatica, with Tri-Brigade, with Snake Eyes of course, and the Diabellstar engine going into OSS as an additional starter. And lately we've seen it more as a pure variant, but I think there is a nice variant that we've seen pop up on the regional landscape in this current Justice Hunters format, and that is the combination with Fiendsmith cards. And I'm going to show you two different variants in this deck profile video today, and I think one is very cool and the other one might be even a little bit spicier, but both are really nice to play with. I've tested both of them, so let's get right into it. For the first version we're playing 40 cards in the main. Of course we'll start with the Fire King engine. For that we're playing 3 Volcanics and 3 Ponics, which are good starters, and then we're maxing out on the good Fire King cards because we want to see them a lot. That is Garunix and Kirin. And then as engine requirement, we're of course also playing the OG Garunix for our Volcanics plays. And then 1 Avada as our monster negate. Very cool card to play around with. And then for spells, we're playing the Island, Sanctuary, and Fire King Skyburn. And since we only have a low amount of 1-card starters or 1.5 card starters, we're also adding in the copy of 1-for-1 because that can get out our Ponics, right? So that's very good. For the Fiendsmith side of the deck, we are playing triple Engraver, 1 Lacrima, 1 Lurie, and then 1 copy of Track, and that already bumps our copies of good starters up by a ton, because before we only had 7. Now you can have, these are all 6 as well, so 13 in theory, 12 because Lurie is the weakest one of them of course, but all of them work really nicely. Then we're playing not really a supplementary engine, but a little card that helps a lot in this format, and that is the triple Fenrir. It's a super cool card to main deck right now. It's really good into Yummy, of course as your first summon, but it's also really good at shutting down turn 0 plays by opponent, right? No matter if they play with the K9 Vanquish Soul deck and they do stuff like Holy Sue or Izuna on your turn, you can stop that. Or if you're playing against Draco Tail and they do stuff with Famina, you can just banish face down the Artharion unless they bounce your Fenrir, which wouldn't make a lot of sense because you just don't want to back out, right? So that's very good for that reason. That is already the bulk card of the engine side of the main deck with 27 cards. That leaves us for 14 more cards for non-engine, and I'll show you these in just a second. For the non-engine, we are settled on 12 fan traps and 2 tech cards. The first fan trap, of course, being Ash Blossom. This protects us from the Charmies, which, especially Perulia, is very annoying for this deck, but since we're playing the Fiendsmith part, Fuvalos, which we're playing ourselves of course, is very annoying as well. Fuva being very good in this format, so I think you should play that. Even better than Perulia, even though that one is really nice as well. And what we want to draw into with Fuvalos, of course, is Nibiru, which is quite good because a lot of decks overextend into it, and especially if you pair it up with, of course, our copies of Imperm. So if you activate Fuva and you draw into one of each, you're already set, right? And then for our tech slots, we settled on Caught By and Talons, both really good for protecting our turn 0 plays, and Caught By also good at shutting down cards like Lupus for the rest of the duel, right? So very good for that reason. What we can also do with Fuvalos, which I forgot to mention, is that it allows us to draw into more Fire King cards, which if we draw any combination of Garunix, Kirin, and any other Fire King monster, be it Ponyx, Volcanics, or Avatar, Avrada, or even the OG Garunix, right? You can do turn 0 stuff on your opponent's turn as well with that. So you activate the Kirin, destroy, let's say, the Volcanics, that summons out the Kirin, and you can activate Garunix from hand to summon him out itself, or you could even summon out Ponyx, right? He has the same effect, but Garunix provides more value because you can then pop a Kirin from deck, destroy a card, and summon out the monster you destroyed with Kirin, right? So that's stuff you can do when you draw into those cards with Fuvalos as well. That's something to remember because even the Fire King deck has some good OG turn 0 plays. That's it for the 41 card main deck. Let's get into the extra. Since we're playing the Fiendsmith engine, we have to make some concessions in the extra deck, and that means we have to heavily cut down on the Fire King part, which isn't a big problem because in the pure variant you run the pots, which means you're playing a lot of triplets and duplicates in the extra deck. Since we're not playing any of the pot cards, right, no Prosperity, no Extravagance, we can just focus on which cards are really important and how many copies we actually need. One card that I want to play as a 2-off is probably the best card in our extra deck for the Fire King engine, and that is the Garunix, the Young Eternity, right? This one is your most powerful interruption, blowing up the entire board as a black hole, right? Destroying all monsters on the board, which can trigger your fire cards again, right? So that is very good. For the Fire King engine, we're as well playing one copy of Army Rush. This is very important to turn your dead hand traps into fire cards. If you just open, for example, hand traps plus Sanctuary or Island, that's very good. Also, if you draw no other Fire King access, you have a hand trap that is dead going second, right? Like, let's say top deck a Fuvalos, and you have a Garunix in hand. What you can do is normal summon that monster, turn it into Armor Rush, and crash it in the battle phase into another monster of your opponent. Then in the damage step, you can summon out Fuvalos, add the Garunix, and do some shenanigans with that. We're as well playing a Heater, which is a good extender in this deck if you get ashed, and then we're playing the Promethean Princess, one of our most powerful interruptions as well, especially since it's layered and sits in the graveyard. And to link it off, since it locks you into fire monsters, we're also playing the Emblem Whale. Then we have one tech card rather, and that is the SP Little Knight. That already leads us into our Fiendsmith engine, where we're of course to link into it, playing the Moon of the Claw 7, and then one Requiem, Sequence, also Agnum Day. I love this card. I always play it if I find space for it in Fiendsmith decks, simply because it allows you to OTK really easily. And then we're playing the Desiree, and of course the Caesar package with Necro Crypt and Caesar. And since the Fire King deck is a grind game deck, what I also like to play is a copy of Typhon. I know this one gets memed on a lot, but I think in those more grind game oriented decks, it's really good. You take apart the opponent's board piece by piece, bit for bit. Then at the end of it, you just summon out the Typhon, bounce the last annoying card, right? So that's quite neat. This is the one only real flex spot. What you could do as well is play Zombie Vampire, because the Fire King cards can really easily put up 2 level 8 monsters, and you can just basically mill for a Fenrir or a Fiendsmith card to get into your Fiendsmith engine. But since we're playing so many Fiendsmith starters, right? 3 Engraver, Lacrima, Lurie, and Tract, of course. I think you don't really need the Zombie Vampire. I think Typhon is better here. So that's it for the extra. Let's get into a potential side deck. For the side deck, we're running a whole lot of more hand traps, and some of them are more matchup specific, and that of course is the triple artifact Lancia that is here, especially for Malice, but it's still good into Crystron, it's good into Lunar Light, right? There's many reasons to run it. Then of course we're still playing the Droll, but in the side deck I think it's more than enough. There's some matchups where it's really good and it's good to side in, but there's a lot of matchups where it really feels bad because you don't really stop much, right? And I think then it's better to have it in the side deck. We're playing triple DD Crow. These are Bestials of the format, and I think they're quite neat because they can hit a lot of different decks. They're good against Draco Tail because you can especially banish the traps, or if they start with a fusion mechanic that or effect that isn't the Famina and they want to add it back with the Athalion, you can just banish the Famina and kind of stop their plays in the tracks, right? That's really good. And it's good against Crystron, it's good against a whole bunch of decks, right? Mitsurugi, if they don't have monsters on the board, you can Bestial that. That's quite nice, right? So I like Crow a lot. That's a good card. And then I think one of the better hand traps of the format is Ghost Ogre. That one just kills all, of course, field spells, but it makes things so awkward. That's why I always like this card. And then we have 4 more slots for going first cards. And I think Triple Solemn Judgment is really good into this deck because we're scared of board breakers. So game 2 going first or game 3 going first, you should always side this in. Just put it in for the Charmies, right, and set on the other hand traps matchup specifically. And then one more going first card is the Fiendsmith in Paradise. I just couldn't find the slots for it in the main deck, and that completes the deck already. Before I go into the second version, I will just quickly talk about why this deck makes sense in my opinion. So I alluded to it before. I think the biggest weakness of the Fire King deck isn't its game plan. I think it has a really cool grind game, and the interruptions are quite layered, and you set up a lot in the graveyard, which is really good because it's hard to interact with for example, board breakers. And you can really do a lot out of nowhere with just little, right? You just need 2 cards, and all of a sudden you can pop off entirely and create a big board, or just take apart a big board, right? And you can do a lot of stuff in the damage step. You're really well insulated from destruction effects because they just trigger your own good effects, right? That's why I think the Fire King deck is quite neat. But I alluded to it before, you only have a low amount of quality starters. And the good thing about the Fiendsmith engine that you can do is include good starters for, of course, another engine. They don't interact with each other directly, right? You can't go from Fiendsmith into Fire King and the other way around from Fire King into Fiendsmith. But what they do is offer a good supplementary engine that puts up strong interruptions without actually really needing a normal summon. Of course, Lacrima and Lurie are both normal summons, but usually those are more our combo pieces through our Fiendsmith line. You will see them in your opening hand, of course, at some point. But if you can play with your Fire King cards, then having just the Fiendsmith cards is really good. Another big reason is that the Caesar line, which I think is the line you should always go for first, insulates us from the Bureau itself. Because when you're in your typical Fire King combo and you are at the step where you're on the Promethean Princes and you want to, for example, summon back your Avada, right, to set up your board and have strong interruptions, what they will usually do on this summon is just nip yourself, right? And then you're stuck with no fire monsters on the board, no way to trigger her. That also means no way to trigger the Garunix in the graveyard. And you can lose really hard to Nibiru, and the Caesar is really good to insulating you from that as well. And I said it before, the Garunix in the extra deck is one of our best interruptions, right? We go first, we just put up 2 level 8s, the Sanctuary, and all of a sudden we just blow up the entire board. And the reason that interruption is really cool is just because it does a lot out of little, right? But it has a strong anti-synergy with most supplementary engines you can play in this deck, because it kills your own monsters as well, right? So you don't really like that. But the good thing about the Fiendsmith engine is, of course, because of the Engraver effect, and really just because of his effect, you have basically infinite grind games. So you can just set up again next turn, right? And then instead of a Caesar, you build a Desiree. And you can basically build a new Desiree every turn or every second turn you have, because you just shuffle your materials back that you need, right? And that's really it. So that's why I like this combination a lot. I think this one is the more head-on approach, but I'll show you a second version that I think makes a lot of sense, and I really enjoyed that one as well. Alright, this is the majority of the second version of the deck, and what you can see is that not a lot has really changed, right? We're still playing the same Fire King stuff, so 3 Ocanix, 3 Ponix, 3 Garunix, 3 Kirin, the OG Garunix, 1 Avada, and 3 of the good spells, so Island Sanctuary and the Skyburn. For the non-engine lineup, not much has really changed as well. We're on 3 Ash, 3 Fuva, 3 Nip, 3 Imper, and 1 Kopai, a couple talents, now we're on clean 40. You could do the same with the other one, but I don't know. I'm still on and off about talents, but let's try to keep this with 40 because we want to see some specific cards a lot, right? And then, of course, we're still running the 3 Fenrir, but the Fiendsmith stuff, that changed a lot, right? We cut down the engine completely. It's just 1 Lacrima and 1 Engraver. You might think, like, how does this work well, right? So there has to be a way where we can put 2 bodies on the board without having each one of these being real bricks, right? Because the Engraver has no targets. We don't have Sank, we don't have Track. And normal summon Lacrima works just as fine as well, right? You just dump the Engraver from deck, turn her into Requiem, and oh, doesn't work, right? You can't really dump the Engraver. So we'll see how we do that. The Master players under you who played during the last format, or the second last format, which was the Snake Eye format, already probably can guess which engine we're going to play. That really helps us facilitate those Fiendsmith plays while also digging for Fire King cards. And that engine we're talking about is the Millennium engine. For that, we're playing 3 Sengenjin, 1 Golem, and 1 Wedju-Temple. What this engine allows us to do is build a zombie vampire that can dig for Fire King cards, right? To search our starters basically by milling them. You can also, if we have Fire King access, which is where I play the big engine, mill for Fenrir, and it always leaves us with at least 2 bodies on the board that we can turn into Moon and go full Fiendsmith combo. Especially drawing the Engraver isn't a problem in that combo because we can just get it into our graveyard and then play with it from there, right? So that's very good. And what we can do as well is have an engine that doesn't require a normal summon, which is very important, and also that allows us to maximize our players, right? I'll show you how we do that in just a second, but let's first have a look at how the extra deck has to change when we play this engine. As you can see, the extra deck stayed pretty much the exact same for the main part. There's just 2 cards we have to replace, and I just put out the, I think, most important cards that we still need. For the Fiendsmith cards, of course, Moon, Requiem, Sequence, Desiree, Necrocrypt, and Caesar. And for the Fire King cards, I think we still need the 2 Garunics. These are your most powerful interruptions in the extra deck next to the Caesar. And then Amirage, Hita, Promethean Princess, Amblewell, and of course SP is so good to banish the Mignon, the Yummy Field spell that gives them the attack boost, and then they're really easy to run over and whatnot, right? But it just has so many good applications, and you can just summon it at the end of your turn after you already went to your battle phase to kind of kill the recursion they, for example, have in the graveyard. The 2 cards we cut are the Agnum and the Typhoon. I think these are the 2 most cuttable cards, because for the Millennium Engine you have 2 requirements that we need to run. And one is, of course, the Zombie Vampire. This allows us to mill and dig for our Fire King starters. And then we'll also have to play the Snake Eyes Doom Dragon. This one allows us to build a second level 8 that we need to go into the Zombie Vampire, but it also allows us to put up over 8k damage with the Millennium Engine in just under, I think it's just 3 summons. Yeah, it's just 3 summons, and you can also use its effect, of course, going second to push back the monster into the spell Trap Zone they control, right? So that's really good. And one thing to note, if you can revive this back with the Promethean Princess, for example, its effect to push back a monster is on special summon. It's not on fusion summon, right? And you just contact fuse into it, of course, using 2 monsters in the spell Trap Zone. So that's it. Another tag option you could play is the number 90 Galaxy Eyes Photon Lord. That though only makes sense, I think, if you play a big Fiendsmith package and you draw Fire King and Fiendsmith Engine with the Millennium Engine, and then you don't need to build a Zombie Vampire, you can build another monster and negate instead, right? That makes more sense. It's of course just a level 8 tech option as well for your Fire King cards, but in this variant, I don't think it makes too much sense because we need the other slots more, I think. Yeah, that's that. The side deck, I will show you as well how it changes, but that's really just 1 card. So you can see the side deck stays exactly the same. The only thing that we did is cut the Fiendsmith in Paradise because we don't have a good way to consistently access it, right? Because we cut down the Fiendsmith engine so much. So what we do instead is just put the talents in the side deck. The rest stays the same. All right, let me show you real quick what you can do with the Millennium Engine. All you need for that is access to Sengenjin, Golem, or the Temple. The Temple just allows you to put 1 body less on the board, so it's a little bit weaker. It's hard to go into Fiendsmith from there. But Sengenjin and Golem pretty much do the same. The sequencing is just a little bit different. But yeah, all you need is Sengenjin, a blank monster in hand, doesn't matter which one, and then these are just 3 blanks from your starting hand, right? I will start with the Sengenjin. We use its effect in the main phase to place itself in the spell Trap Zone. And we pay 2000 life points to summon it out and grab our copy of the Golem. The Golem does the exact same. We place it here, pay 2000 life points, summon it out, and grab our copy of the Wedju-Temple. We then activate the Wedju-Temple and activate its effect, which allows us to place a monster from our hand and another Sengenjin from our deck into our spell Trap Zone. What we do then here is we contact fuse these 2 into our copy of the Snake Eyes Doom Dragon. And if we go second, this one allows us to push back a monster of the opponent into the spell Trap Zone. What we have now is 2 level 8 bodies on board, right? Especially if our opponent didn't put up a board as well. Don't forget, this is an easy OTK because now you have 8750 damage on board with the effect to push back a monster, right? If they brick a little bit, they just put up 1 monster because you hand trap them, whatever, right? This is just already means game. So it's really easy to close out games with this engine. What we do now is we overlay these 2 into a level 8, which is the Zombie Vampire. You can then use the Zombie Vampire effect to detach. You want to usually detach the Sengenjin, because if your opponent plays Hita for whatever reason, they can summon this one back and then break your board with that, right? So Sengenjin is the safer option. And we move forth from our deck and the opponent's deck. We hit nothing, 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 and oh, it's a Ponix. Summon out the Ponix, of course. Then use its effect, which grabs us the Sanctuary. We activate Sanctuary, right? And then place Island over the Wedju-Temple. And this means we have full Fire King combo here, right? But what we can do now as well before extending is use these 2. Go into Moon, Moon into Requiem, right? That means we have full Fiendsmith combo as well. Just out of 1 Sengenjin as long as we hit a Fire King card. That's really it. The sequencing for the Golem is nearly the same. Let me just show you real quick how the Golem looks like. What we do with the Golem as well is we activate its effect, summon it out paying 2000 life points, grabbing the Temple. We then activate the Temple, use its effect, place Fuva and the Sengenjin from our deck into the spell trap zone. Then we use the effect of Sengenjin to summon out, because it can also search itself. We haven't used the effect of Sengenjin yet to place in the spell trap zone, which we'll do. Then we contact fuse into the Snake Eyes Dragon and ta-da! It's the same thing, right? The Wedju-Temple is a little bit different. Let me show you what. What we do when we start with the Temple is a little bit different. When we activate it, we can again use its effect, placing the Fuva and a Sengenjin from our deck into the spell trap zone. Use the Sengenjin effect, pay 2000 life points, summon it out, grab a copy of the Golem, activate its effect, place it in the spell trap zone. Then contact fuse these two, because we can search for another Millennium name that we can summon out. And then get the Snake Eyes Dragon on the board. And then we can again, after maybe using its effect going second, overlay these two to a zombie vampire, detach again, use the effect, mill 4, and then we get a Ponyx hit, for example, right? Or the Volcanics if we have another fire in hand, whatever, right? You know what the deal is, but now you can see we lack the one additional body that we had before with the Golem on board, which means it's hard to go into Moon, right? We need another monster on the board throughout our Fire King combo that we can actually use, not for Promethean Princess, but actually for the Moon to go into the full Fiendsmith combo. That's why the Temple is the weakest starter of all the three, right? Alright, that's already it for the deck profile video. We had two cool variants, and I'm really excited to see what people can cook up with the Fire King deck still. There's again a ton of options how you can play this deck and adjust it for the format. These two variants I think are the most spicy ones right now and most interesting ones, but I really hope that we will see some support in the future that really can take this deck to the next level, or just an unban of the OSS, right? That alone would allow us to play this again with either Snake Eyes or just as a pure variant with a ton of starters and a little bit of as a Mina engine in it as well, right? So that's it for the video. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a nice day.